We move over to Matt Maiocco in just a few moments on the UMA guest line. He's going to be joining us on camera as well. So, Krug, as people watching us on YouTube and Twitch see, got a whole bunch of red lights around us. You think Matt Maiocco is going to make it 3 and it's just going to be full-on 49er red lights? I don't know. I'm guessing white background with a football, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, we'll see. That's the beauty. You got to check it out on the YouTube and see what Matty's wearing.
We're going to connect with him here in just a moment. And Matt Maiocco actually sent us moments ago. It was a tweet of his from 2021, but it was George Seifert and Charles Haley catching up and giving a little hug to each other. And that's a pretty fun moment, as he said, am I still your favorite coach, Charles? And he said, you taught me the game. So we will welcome him in right now on the UMA guest line. We do it every Friday. Matt, thank you for your patience. I hope you can forgive the long time we spent with Carmen Policy, but you got to take advantage of those opportunities, and we're excited to talk to you as well. How's it going?
It's going well, and yeah, that did spark some memories, and I sent you guys that tweet that I did a couple of years ago, and it was really interesting because George, after he got out of football, he's outdoorsman, he's a hunter, fisherman. He doesn't come around the 49ers all that often. But he does enjoy, talking about those days and that obviously it's such a big part of his life. And so when I saw him backstage and Charles Haley walked by, I mean, there was a part of me that was like, oh my gosh, what's this going to be like? But the amount of mutual respect that they showed each other, George is funny. He was like, am I still your favorite coach, Charles? And Charles was really serious. You just read what he said, but yeah, he said, you taught me the game. And George was kind of like, oh, come on, Charles. And Charles was like, no, George, you did. And that's when I kind of walked away and let those two men kind of have their moment. But it was fascinating. And what Carmen said about so much more about that whole situation that we don't know. I mean, we can only imagine how wild those times were in Santa Clara.
Or not only in Santa Clara. I mean, when Emmitt Smith held out, I believe it was Charles Haley who hurled his helmet at a wall, and it pierced the wall next to Jerry Jones and damaged the wall. And I think within 24 hours of that incident, Jerry signed Emmitt. I forget what year it was.
Yeah.
Emmitt was holding out, but Charles was a powerful presence. Let's just say that. Probably still.
Yes, he was. Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the more famous stories, and speaking about powerful presences, is when Steve Young was the quarterback of the 49ers and they were playing in the LA Coliseum against the Raiders.
Right.
And I think
9-6.
and I think the 49ers offense was maybe held to 9 points that day in a loss. And Charles was so upset, and I'm just kind of really underplaying the word upset, that people from the 49ers had to go over to the Raiders locker room in order to get Ronnie Lott to come over to the 49ers locker room. Ronnie, obviously, in full uniform with the Raiders at that time, because Ronnie had such respect of everybody that basically he was the only person who could have remedied that problem to get Charles to kind of, mellow out a little bit. So, yeah, wild stories from those days with the 49ers.
Matt, moving it over to the present here, I heard you reference 4 rookies that you really like as week 1 starters, and the surprise one in that bunch was Nick Martin. And to be clear, that wasn't to replace D. Winters as the weak side linebacker position, but Nick Martin is someone who struggled a little bit in preseason game number 1, and then 2 and 3 was looking a whole lot better. Why do you like Nick Martin as a week 1 starter on this young defense?
Yeah, when you say struggle a little bit week 1, you're being very kind. He wasn't very good at all. And I think the more important thing was that Nick Martin realized that he did more than just struggle a little bit. He was awful in that game, and he fully recognized it, to the point where, whatever that was, 15 minutes after the game, when I go over to talk to Nick Martin at his locker, his head is down and he's already watching film of that game that had just happened. So here's why I like Nick Martin in a starting role. And it's for that weak side, or I'm sorry, the strong side linebacker, the Sam linebacker, because that guy's only on the field for, 30% of the snaps in a game. He's the first player that goes off the field whenever the 49ers or any team goes into their nickel defense. I like Nick Martin over Luke Gifford in that role because that's something you can work with. That's a piece of the puzzle for the future. And there very well might come a point during the season where the 49ers determine, or Nick Martin basically plays his way into being the team's best weak side linebacker, the guy who's on the field all the time. So I like the idea of just getting your three best linebackers on the field. And I think the way that Nick Martin was trending the last 2 or 3 weeks of training camp led me to believe that, you know what, I think he's one of their three best linebacker and certainly a guy with a very high ceiling. And the more he plays, the better he's going to get. So, hey, this team knows that they're going to take some lumps. Maybe that won't be reflected in their win-loss record, but there will be certain rookies who have a lot of learning to do and are going to get beat and are going to have some humbling experiences. But the idea is when you draft 11 guys, 10 of them make your 53-man, and then another undrafted guy makes the 53-man. So 11 rookies on this team. I think in order for this team to be at its best as the season goes on and into late November, December, maybe January, and for the 49ers, they're hoping February as well. I think the best way to do that is to put the guys who are your most talented players, the guys who have the room to grow and get better. And I think Nick Martin fits that bill. I think he could be just as good as Luke Gifford week one, and then as the season goes on, far surpass what the free agent pickup Luke Gifford brings to the 49ers defense. And again, that's in a limited role. It's the Sam linebacker, but it also gets his feet wet and gets him moving in the right direction and learning and gaining experience in a short period of time, or I should say in small doses, until that time comes when he is a starter and playing every snap on defense through the course of a game.
Yeah, he is a special player, and it's funny if you really want to know how special a player is, just ask some of the other players about him. And when you ask other Niner players about him, they almost all universally laugh before they start talking about this guy because it's such a joyous topic to talk about a guy with sideline to sideline range and the kind of mental capacity that this guy has. It's a great player. I mean, it's a great player.
Yeah, and Larry, I'll kind of expand on what you're saying there. We're afforded this incredible luxury or privilege, I guess you could say, of being in the locker room and being able to talk to a guy and look him in the eye and read the body language and everything. And so I remember after that first game, that game against the Broncos, where I was thinking, oh my gosh, what a disaster that was. This guy's not ready. And I realized that, people on Twitter were already calling him a bust. But after I spoke to him for like 5 or 7 minutes, and I got a sense, the first time talking to him face to face, one-on-one, man, I walked away from that going, oh, yeah, no, he's made the right stuff. He's a guy you don't have to worry about. Like, he's going to get it, and he's going to get it fast.
Yeah, he is a blue chipper. He is really, really good. All right, let's talk some turkey on Jennings. Kawakami had a article out or went on the radio yesterday and said that that he thinks that the Jennings wants north of $20 million. Lynch talked to all of us the other day and said, there's a couple of issues at play. Those things have to settle themselves. Obviously, one being the calf, the other being the contract. What do you think, Matt? I mean, I've been doing this for a while. You've been doing this for a while. I just have a hard time picturing the ship coming to shore on this one. I don't see how it's going to get done. To me, it seems like an old-fashioned impasse, but I don't know. Maybe you see it differently. What's coming down the road with Jauan Jennings?
Yeah, what Tim said, I have absolutely zero reason to question that. And even checking with some people, that seems to be what's out there as far as people on the team side and even other people, like agents, people in the football world who represent other receivers and have a good idea of what that market is and what people are putting their own self-worth at. So upwards, in excess of 20 million. I think I was just on with the morning guys on Thursday, and they asked me like, what's the number that gets it done? And I was like, well, it seems to me like 15 is a good, like, reasonable, rational number. Up from 7.5 or whatever he's scheduled to make. 15 seems about right. Well, 15 isn't even in the ballpark of 2025. So you do wonder. I get the sense that the 49ers are open to doing business, but I think they're open to doing business at a number that they would consider reasonable and rational. And I don't know that 20 to 25 is reasonable and rational for where Jennings is right now. So, what's it? And I would think, I mean, if Jauan Jennings is a businessman, like he takes care of his business on the field, what is he? He's a prideful guy. He's an emotional guy. He's a stubborn guy. He's not going to back down from any challenge. So if he conducts his business like he plays football, I think the word you use, Larry, impasse, is very much in play. And so how far does he take it? How much are the 49ers willing to go up from whatever they're comfortable offering Jauan Jennings? The thing is, I guess the longer this goes on, the less that Jauan Jennings is important to the 49ers. After 3 weeks, he becomes a little less important to the 49ers because Demarcus Robinson is back. After another 2 or 3 weeks, maybe he becomes a little less important to the 49ers because Brandon Ayuk could be back. And also, this time that he's missed, he left the practice field on July 27th, and basically we haven't seen him since. He hasn't been practicing. So, is he ready to go week one if he's out there on the practice field Monday? That's key. Is he out on the practice field Monday? If he's not, I mean, can you just write off week one? And now you're talking about how impactful could he be week 2 or week 3 when they need him? They need him weeks 1, 2, and 3 because, other than Ricky Pearsall, I don't even know how they construct that wide receiver position for that first game in Seattle. Ricky Pearsall is so far and away more productive and better than any other receiver in the room. And I'm talking just everything, especially the chemistry with Brock Purdy. I mean, I guess it would be Russell Gage, assuming he's healthy. Sky Moore is going to be out there because he's going to be returning kicks. So, what's his role going to be? Does Robbie Chosen get bumped up from the practice squad? Is Jordan Watkins ready to go? I doubt that. Malik Collins, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, he's new to the building on the practice squad, so they'd have to elevate him from the practice squad. But he has a very short period of time to impress the coaches to the point where he earns a uniform as one of their top 48 players. So, I mean, everything is very much up in the air. And I think the 49ers, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, have said the right things. They're not trying to stir it up, unlike a year ago when they clearly put the pressure on Brandon Ayuk to just go ahead and sign that contract that had been on the table for 21 days. What John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan didn't say with their words, John Lynch said with his body language, the exasperated sigh, the slumped shoulders, his line, 2 things can be equally true. He can have a hurt calf and he can want a new contract. So, how much of it is the calf? How much of it is the contract? I'd say at this point, the only person who knows that answer truly is Jauan Jennings.
Matt, while we're on the topic of receivers, you put out there that Kendrick Bourne's going to be visiting with the Niners on Monday and then the Commanders on Tuesday. Bringing back Kendrick Bourne, do you see that right now as a small needle mover, a large needle mover because of the state of that wide receiver room? Would this be something that is a short-term solution and probably nothing more? What's your view on Kendrick Bourne as he's kind of worked through that foot injury and got released by New England?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be in case there's no Jauan Jennings this season, and Kendrick Bourne kind of steps into his place, which is kind of interesting because it was Jauan Jennings who took over for Kendrick Bourne. Kendrick Bourne was a very reliable third down target, red zone target. And then once he played 4 years and was eligible for unrestricted free agency, the New England Patriots paid him a nice sum of money. So Kendrick Bourne's career has been 4 years with the 49ers, 4 years with New England. He had the ACL tear in 2023. So, that year was kind of a wash. And then last year, the production wasn't all that great just because I think, he's still returning from that. But if you look at those 4 years, basically put up identical numbers, 4 years with the 49ers and 4 years with New England. So, where he is needed. I mean, let's just look ahead. Let's just say week 12 of the season. 49ers top 3 receivers week 12 of the season could be Brandon Ayuk, Ricky Pearsall, and Demarcus Robinson. That's not bad. When you consider Demarcus Robinson was a 17-game starter last year with the Rams, he could be their third receiver. And then you factor in some of the other names that I mentioned, Russell Gage, Sky Moore, there's 5 right there. So, where would Kendrick Bourne fit in? What's, again, I mean, the big piece to this puzzle is Jauan Jennings. I don't get the sense that 49ers right now are willing to pay Kendrick Bourne a lot of money. So we'll see if that thing gets done. But I think if he's healthy, having him for the short term would certainly help this 49ers team.
Yeah, don't forget Jordan Watkins, too. I think Watkins, I know he's got the high ankle sprain, and we're not even sure of his status physically for week 1, but I really think Watkins is a precocious young receiver. I mean, I think he's a guy who's going to hit the ground running. I would not be surprised. Him and Trey Harris are very polished, and both of them played at Ole Miss. I think Watkins is going to surprise people, and that could hurt JJ's leverage if all of a sudden Jordan Watkins steps out there and looks like a dynamic guy who can really help.
Yeah, Larry. He does have a lot of potential, but as we saw in that first preseason game, man, he needs to get out there. He needs to play, and that having that high ankle sprain, which doesn't look like a real serious high ankle sprain as far as high ankle sprains go. I saw him running out there yesterday, and he looked good running. But, he had that 50-yard catch in that game against the Broncos' number 1 defense, it should be added. And so that was just like, wow, that was an eye-opener. But then, he false starts, which is fine. Everybody false starts. But then, he makes the wrong adjustment on a route, and everybody sees that Mac Jones made a horrible throw and it's an interception, but it's actually on Jordan Watkins. So those are the kinds of things that need to get ironed out, and he needed those final 3 weeks to help him get in the right page with everybody. But those are things that coaches don't tolerate. So he missed some valuable learning experience of having that injury.
No question. In fact, I asked Todd Husek last night on Niners Nightly, which you can catch from 6 to 7 on these Sports Leader. You like how I got that in there?
Nice.
But Husek, I asked him, I said, how much run do you need with a receiver before you're comfortable, before you iron out all the bugs? And he said, it's not like it's something that can be done in an hour or a couple practices. He said, you need about 3 weeks for a receiver and a quarterback of repping it on the practice field before all the different routes and all the different questions get answered that you can truly get on the same page. But I got one last one for you, Maddie, before we say goodbye, because I got to ask you about this. I totally agree with what your assessment is of Jennings. He's prideful. He's stubborn. He's verbal. He's a powerful presence in the room. And it sounds like Rosenhaus is trying to go for the home run ball, and it doesn't seem like the Niners are going down that road. I can't picture that they are. So if Jennings, and they don't want to trade him, Lynch, hey, we don't, we talked about it, we thought about it, we ain't doing that. It's like he didn't even want to talk about it. So he's going to be in this room, but he's a powerful presence. How concerned do you think the Niners are, or maybe should be, if they don't get a deal done with JJ? He's such a leader. He's so powerful. Do you want an unhappy leader, powerful presence in the middle of your locker room? How concerned do you think they are about that?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want anybody unhappy, but, from the 49ers standpoint, if they made everybody happy, they'd be paying everybody $25 million a year, and so, Yeah, it is bad business. So I don't know, man. I think that, there's the pride of I'm worth this. I'm not going to be someone who's taken advantage of. He's 28 years old, so the clock is ticking on his career. He's never going to be as much in demand as he is right now. That next contract that he signs, whether it's with the 49ers or with some other team in March, that's going to be the biggest contract that he signs, the most value that he has, the most he'll ever be in demand. But, so you have that part of the pride thing working, but also once he's on the field, he needs to produce. And so the pride then has to kick in that he needs to do. He needs to do what he can possibly do to not only match what he did last year, but maybe expand on it. And, what did he have last year? 77 catches, 975 yards, 6 touchdowns. That's a good season. That's a really good season. Is that $25 million a year season? Probably not. I would guess almost everybody would say, no, it's not. So I think the pride part of it is that the 49ers are banking on him being a professional. And even if he's not happy with the stuff that's going on off the field, he will at least kind of take out that frustration on the field. And maybe you see an even more amped up version of Jauan Jennings.
Matt, we always appreciate your time. Thanks for being flexible on the clock with us today. And next time we talk to you, we'll be football season underway, and we'll be 2 days away from the 49ers opening kickoff. So really looking forward to it. Enjoy your weekend and get ready for this thing to start for real.
All right. Thanks, gentlemen. Always my pleasure. And that was a heck of a lot of fun listening to Carmen Policy. When I first started on the 49ers beat, man, he was the face of that franchise and silver-tongued, and there was always plenty of quotes when I'd have the notepad out in front of Carmen. So that was a great trip down memory lane. Thanks a lot for having him on.
Absolutely. No, thanks for sending us that tweet as well, making it a full circle interview right before we had you on. So, enjoy the week, and we'll catch up next Friday.
Thanks, Matty.
Okay, thanks, guys.
You can check him out, Matt Maiocco, 49ers insider for KNBR and NBC Sports Bay Area. We got Andy Baggerly coming up in about 20 minutes.